You built the spreadsheet yourself, which is either impressive or a warning sign, and now you are staring at a row you are pretty sure is a typo. It took you 19 years to save your first $250,000. 19 years of packed lunches and skipped weddings and telling people you were busy. 19 years of watching a number crawl, and your own spreadsheet says the next $750,000, 3 times as much money, lands almost 3 years sooner than that. So you check the formula, you widen the column, you assume you dragged a decimal somewhere in row 4. You did not. The row is fine. This is not a video about discipline or manifesting, or a guy in a rented Lamborghini telling you to trust the process. This is a video about one arithmetic threshold where the math quietly changes hands, where you stop pushing the thing and the thing starts pulling you. My name is Nick, and I have spent an unreasonable amount of my adult life staring at compounding curves the way other people stare at sports highlights. Stay with me, because there is a single line, one number you can work out in about 9 seconds that decides whether the thing in the title is true for you or a lie. And I need to warn you now, there is a version of this where $250,000 is nowhere near halfway, and you need to know which version you are living in. Hit that like button and let us go find out. Let us define the claim properly, because the internet states it like a law of physics, and it is not. Obviously, $250,000 is not halfway in dollars. In dollars, you are 1/4 of the way there. The claim is about your time. It says the years you spend clawing from 0 to the milestone roughly equal the years from there to 7 figures, which sounds insane, because the second leg is 3 times bigger. Here is why it is even possible. From $250,000 to $1 million is exactly 2 doublings. 250 becomes 500,000, 500,000 becomes $1 million, and that is your entire back half. 2 doublings. And a doubling does not care how big your number is. Doubling $40,000 and doubling $400,000 take the same amount of time at the same rate. The market does not charge extra for bigger numbers. Your effort does. Let me introduce you to Bernadette, who is going to do all of our arithmetic today. She is 31, works in medical billing, makes about $70,000 a year, and puts $500 a month into a target date fund she picked because the year in the name was closest to when she wants to stop working. That is the entire strategy. She has an investing app she has opened 4 times, twice by accident. And in year 2, she skipped her roommate's bachelorette in Nashville, which she still hears about, to keep that $500 going. $500 a month at 7%. How long until you cross $250,000? 19 years and 7 months. That is a brutal sentence to hear out loud. You would be 50 years old before you get there, and for most of those 19 years, your account looks like a savings account with an attitude problem. Year 3, you would have about $20,000. Which is a used Corolla with 90,000 miles on it and a check engine light. Year 5, around $36,000. Year 10, roughly $87,000. You are putting in $6,000 a year, and the market is handing you back pocket change and a receipt. Year 7 is where Bernadette nearly ends this story, and if you have been investing a while, you know the scene. She opens the app on purpose for once, sees $54,000, and works out that she personally handed over 42 of it. 7 years, and the market's entire contribution is $12,000. She thinks, reasonably, that she could stop and be fine. That is the moment. Not a crash, not a panic, just a Tuesday and a balance that does not look like it was worth the bachelorette. Most people quit in that room, and they quit while being completely right about the arithmetic in front of them. What they are wrong about is that arithmetic being the whole picture. She does not stop, which is the only interesting decision she ever makes and the only one you have to copy. So from that $250,000, how long until you have $1 million? Still $500 a month, still 7%, nothing about your life changes. 16 years and 10 months. 19 years and 7 months to build the first 250,000. 16 years and 10 months to build the next 750,000. Your back half is 3 times the money, and it is almost 3 years faster. For Bernadette, the milestone is not halfway. It is better than halfway. She is past the hump and she has no idea, because nothing on her screen announced it. So what happened? Because it feels like cheating, and I want to show you the mechanism instead of waving at the word compounding like it is a magic spell. There is a balance at which your portfolio earns more in a year than you put in. Call it your crossover, the day your money out earns you. You find it by taking what you contribute in a year and dividing it by your expected return as a decimal. That is the machinery under everything today, and in a few minutes it hands us the line I promised you. Bernadette puts in 6,000 a year. 6,000 divided by 0.07 is 85,700. The day her balance touches roughly 86,000, her portfolio starts contributing more to itself each year than she does. She becomes the junior partner in her own retirement account. Nobody sends a letter, there is no confetti. Her app does not push a notification saying, "Congratulations, you are now the less important half of this operation." It just happens quietly in year 10 while she is at work arguing with an insurance company. That is why the $250,000 has this reputation. It is the first big round number sitting safely past your crossover if you save like most normal people. By the time Bernadette gets there, her account throws off around $17,500 a year while she puts in 6. Her money out works her nearly 3 to 1. Her grind did not end because she got better at it, it ended because it stopped being the engine. Now here is where I have to be straight with you. The halfway claim is not universal, it is conditional, and what it is conditional on is you. Meet Lowell. Lowell is 34, he is a project manager, he makes about $140,000, and he is aggressive. $2,000 a month, every month, same 7%. Lowell hits $250,000 in 7 years and 10 months. Bernadette needed almost 20. Lowell did it in under 8, and if you are Lowell right now, you are feeling extremely good about yourself and you should enjoy the next 40 seconds. How long does he need to go from there to $1 million? 11 years and 8 months. Do the subtraction on that yourself. 7 years and 10 months on the front, 11 years and 8 months on the back. For Lowell, the milestone is well short of halfway. His back half takes about 50% longer than his front half, which sounds like a fine for saving too hard, and I promise you it is not. Run his crossover the way you will run yours. 24,000 a year divided by 0.07 is 342,900. So when Lowell crosses 250, he is still the engine. His deposits still outrank the market. He has not handed over the wheel because for him it changes hands later. So the honest version is this. $250,000 is halfway when your contributions are modest enough that the market does the heavy lifting, which describes the overwhelming majority of you watching. And here is the part that should reframe how you feel about your own boring monthly transfer. The less you can afford to put in, the more true this video is about you. Bernadette gets the better deal on time precisely because she had to lean on compounding instead of her paycheck. That is not a participation trophy for being broke, that is just the math. Which brings us to the line. Here it is, the number I promised you in the first 30 seconds, and it is exact. Work out the contribution where your front half and back half take exactly the same number of years, then look at that person's crossover. At 5%, it is $125,000. At 6%, $125,000. At 7, at 8, at 10%, $125,000 every single time. Your return rate changes how long the journey takes. It never moves that line. And $125,000 is exactly half of $250,000. So here is your law, and it is not a rule of thumb. The milestone is halfway to $1 million when your crossover is half the milestone, which means you can skip the crossover entirely and ask one question instead. What does $250,000 earn in a year at your expected return? At 7%, $17,500. Now cut that in half. $8,750 a year, or $729 a month. That is your line, and it is the only number from today you need to keep. Under $729 a month, the $250,000 is halfway or better, and your back half is the easier one. Over it, you are Lowell, the milestone shows up early, and the back half is the longer climb. Bernadette at 500 is comfortably under. Lowell at 2,000 is nearly 3 times over, and most of you watching are under it, which is the entire point of this video. Charlie Munger described this line 30 years before anyone made a chart of it. He told a young guy at a shareholder meeting that the first 100,000 is brutal, but you have to do it, and after that, you can ease off the gas. Nobody who quotes him adjusts for inflation. Munger's 100 grand is about 222,000 today, so when the internet moved the milestone to 250,000, it was not being dramatic. It was doing the conversion. Which means if you are under the line, there is a reward waiting that almost nobody finds out about because almost nobody stays long enough to collect it. So let me show you what it actually is, because it is the single most absurd number in this entire video and I have checked it 4 times hoping it was wrong. Take Bernadette the moment she crosses 250 and imagine everything stops. Not because anything bad happened, just pick your reason. A layoff, a kid, a pay cut to do something she actually likes. She never contributes another dollar again. At 7% with nothing added, that 250,000 becomes $1 million in 20 years and 6 months. At 8%, 18 years. At 10%, 14 and a half. That is the payoff. Get a 250,000 invested by your late 30s, never add another cent, and you are still on track to be a millionaire in your late 50s. You become technically a professional sitter, not because you were smart, not because you picked anything, because you were early and then you were absent. The most consequential financial work of your life is the part where you do nothing, and it happens right after the part that felt like it was not working. Real quick, I am curious. Drop a comment and tell me which side of your crossover you are on. Not your balance, nobody needs your balance, just above or below. I read these and it tells me what to make next. And by the way, I opened a school community where I break down how to build and scale a faceless YouTube channel from zero, which is honestly the fastest way I know to move the contribution number we have been talking about all video. It costs nothing, the link is below. Anyway, back to your math because I owe you the uncomfortable half. Everything so far assumed 7% forever smoothly. Reality does not do smooth. 4 things will push your crossover further out than you think, so let me put them on the table instead of pretending they are not there. The first is that the average return is a statistical fiction. In roughly a century of market history, only about 5 calendar years actually landed between 8 and 12%. The average is where the extremes cancel out, not where the years live. From 2000 to 2009, the S&P 500 returned negative 0.95% per year with dividends for an entire decade. $1 million went in and 909,000 came out. Congratulations, you invested through an entire decade and the market handed you a bill. Everybody who lived through it will tell you it felt considerably longer than 10 years, and your crossover decides how much that should scare you. If a decade like that lands before your crossover, while your balance is small and your deposits are the engine, it is survivable and it honestly helps. Because every automatic transfer is buying shares on sale. Run one over Bernadette's first 10 years and it barely dents her. It makes her year 7 considerably uglier and her year 30 slightly better. Run the same decade over her 50s instead and it is a different video entirely. Because now the market is doing the work and your deposits are a rounding error and it can add 5 to 10 years onto your back half. Which means Lowell, sprinting to 250 and still short of his own crossover, is better protected than he thinks. The order of your returns matters, not just the average. If you are still here, good, because the next one is the one that actually changes your line. Second, nobody is forecasting 7 right now. As I record this, the Shiller-Cape ratio sits around 42, the second highest sustained reading in about 140 years, behind only the dot-com peak. Vanguard's 10-year outlook for U.S. equities is roughly 4 to 6%. Goldman published a note projecting about 3. So the consensus is somewhere between 3 and 6, and by consensus I mean 4 firms disagreeing by more than the number they are forecasting. They have been wrong before in both directions, but rerun this at 5% and watch what it does to you. Your line drops from 729 a month to 521. Bernadette's crossover jumps to 120,000, her front half stretches to 22 and a half years, her back half to 22.2. Still halfway, almost exactly. A beautiful piece of symmetry and 3 extra years of year 7s. Third, your finish line is running away from you, 1,020 years out at 2.5% inflation. Buys about $610,000 of today's groceries at 3%, 554. The word million has been quietly deflating since your parents said it like it meant a house, a boat, and never working again. Aim higher than the number in this title. And fourth, fees, which is the cheapest fix in personal finance and entirely yours to make. Take Bernadette coasting on her $250,000. At 7%, she needs 20 years and 6 months to reach $1 million. Put her in a fund charging 1% instead of 3/100, so she nets 6, and she needs 23 years and 10 months. That 1% printed so small on her statement, she would need reading glasses and a genuine reason to care. Just cost her 3 years and 4 months. Not 3 years of money, 3 years of Bernadette. It also shoves her crossover from 86,000 to 100,000, so she spends longer in the grinding half too. 1% charges you twice and discloses it once, in a footnote in gray. It is the most expensive rounding error you will ever agree to. Now let me show you where you actually sit, because there is a gap between the arithmetic and the country, and pretending otherwise would make me one of the guys I make fun of. If your net worth is under $200,000, you are not behind. You are the middle. Median household net worth in this country, per the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, is $192,900. Here is the number people quote at you instead. The mean is $1,063,700. Same country, same survey, 5.5 times apart, because a few enormous fortunes drag the average into millionaire territory while your actual neighbors sit under 200 grand. Most of it locked in the house they sleep in. The average American also has slightly fewer than 2 legs. Averages are like that. Anytime somebody hands you an average net worth, they are handing you the fortune of people you will never meet. Your retirement account tells the same story. Fidelity puts the average 401k around $141,000. Median 32,800. Vanguard says average 168, median 44. So if you are staring at a balance in the 30s, wondering what is wrong with you, the answer is nothing. You are standing exactly where half the country is standing, and 4.6% of households have $1 million or more in retirement accounts. Among people 55 to 64, right at the door, 9.2%. So none of this is supposed to feel normal. If you save the median rate in this country, you are putting away roughly $500 a month, which is Bernadette's exact number, which means your first climb genuinely does take about 20 years. The system is not built so your first $250,000 is easy. It is built so your first $250,000 is the entire test, and most people wash out in years 3 through 7 when the balance is finally real money, but the growth is still invisible and your crossover is still a rumor. And I want to be careful here, because there is a version of this video that ends with "just try harder," and that version is garbage. 6% of retirement plan participants took a hardship withdrawal last year, the highest on record. The top reasons were avoiding eviction and paying medical bills. If that has been you, you did not fail a discipline test. You live in a country where the emergency fund and the retirement account are frequently the same account, and where the thing between you and your line is not your character, it is a deductible. But here's the hard evidence that your version of this works. Fidelity tracks people who have saved in the same plan continuously for 15 years. Their average balance is $558,300, not stock pickers, not people with a system, people who did not stop. Their average 401k millionaire is close to 59 and has been in the same account about 25 years. There is no shortcut anywhere in that sentence. There is a very long, very boring line, and the people still standing in it. Every one of them had a year 7, they just did not do anything about it, so take the one line and leave the rest. Not the $250,000, which is a round number somebody picked because it sounds like something. $729 a month at 7%, or whatever half of your expected annual growth on a $250,000 works out to at your rate. Under it, the hard half is behind you, and the big half is the easy one. Over it, you are buying speed instead of leverage, and you should know that is the trade you made rather than find out at 50. And wherever you land, the grind you are in right now is not a verdict on you. Before your crossover, your savings rate is the only real lever, which is why this stretch feels like pure grind. It is pure grind. After it, the market is the bigger lever, and your job changes from producing to not interfering. Two completely different games, same account, and nobody tells you when you switched. I am not a financial advisor, and none of this is financial advice. It is arithmetic, and arithmetic does not know your life, your health, your kids, or what your industry looks like in 9 years. But that spreadsheet you built, the one with the row you thought was a typo, you did not find a trick in there. You found the place where the sentence stops being about you. For 19 years, that account grew because you showed up. And then, with no notification and no confetti, it started growing because it existed. The $250,000 was never the achievement. The $250,000 is just your receipt for surviving the part where it was all on you.